taking the test, pretty quiet, and then I hear a loud thud. And I look over and I don't understand what that was. And then I notice maybe 20 feet away from me, I see legs on the ground shaking. A student was having a seizure. They didn't stop the test. They came in with paramedics and like stretchered her out. And it was just like, keep going, keep going. And that was my last academic uh, higher learning experience.
Hey everyone, this is the How I Got Here podcast, or Hi podcast for short. This podcast is to tell stories that are worth sharing of people that went from zero to hero, hero to zero, or something in between. Now, this podcast episode, we talk to Mr. Mark Phillip of Metabet and Are You Watching This? We'll be seeing how he went from wanting to be somebody that was working in a toll booth while he was in kindergarten, all the way to where he is now with a lot of stuff in between. Let's go ahead and jump right into our conversation with him now. Enjoy. Hey guys, it's me, Travis with playerprops.ai, and this is episode 3 of my brand new Hi podcast, which of course stands for How I Got Here. We are joined today on this episode by Mr. Mark Phillip himself. Even though I've known you now for probably about a year and a half, let's go ahead and introduce to the viewers and listeners kind of what is your title as of today of the, I believe it's like 3 different companies that you're essentially leading right now.
If you ask the IRS, it's just one.
Yes. Let me hold on. Let me ban them from my YouTube channel real quick. All right, there we go.
Are You Watching This is the company that I started back in 2006. Technically, my title is CEO, but also head of HR, lead janitor, and pretty much everything in between. We started a company called Metabet that a lot of your audience will probably know better than Are You Watching This? But that's our gambling arm that we started in 2018. So it's about 20 years in the sports excitement gambling world.
All right. And I always like to kind of start. I say always, like I've done like 1,000 of these episodes. This is what I always like to do. But what I'm going to like to do for the beginning part is go way, way, way back to your earliest possible memory of you having an initial idea of this is what I want to be when I grow up. Whether it's kindergarten, or maybe you didn't know and have any kind of figment of your imagination until like senior year of high school. What's the earliest age, and what did you originally want to be as your first memory?
I remember it was kindergarten actually, because my mom saved this. We were doing this, sort of journaling, not journaling, but like teacher would write some questions and we would have to answer it. Maybe first grade, somewhere around there. But I wrote that I wanted to be a toll person because I thought the people that collected the tolls, like on the highway or on the bridges, was just the coolest thing because you had this little office, it was totally yours, and you got to touch money all day. What could be better? And the reason why why it sticks in my head, and why my mom found it so amazing, was that my teacher, uh, my penmanship isn't good now, it wasn't good then. She thought I was trying to say I want to be a tall person because she could imagine that someone would want to work in a toll booth. And so she wrote in big red ink, no, it's tall, and corrected me, but not realizing that being a toll booth worker was what I wanted to do from an early age.
So you said roughly kindergarten, first grade. So we're talking like 5 or 6 years old. You just had some fascination with those people in the boxes, and your teacher's like, "There's no way that's what he meant. He's yay about high. He probably meant he wanted to be tall."
Exactly. And so that was the one that, yeah, that's the one that jumps right out. Still working on getting that gig, but maybe one day.
I feel like based on your current resume, you might be able to swing it, maybe.
We'll see.
And then you can promote Are You Watching This? You can probably do like a podcast or something.
Oh.
Or there's got to be a way to implement everything you're doing now to toll booths. There's always a way. And if you don't know, ChatGPT can help you.
It's very possible. I mean, I'm a Brooklyn native. I'm a big nerd when it comes to public transportation, flights, trains, no matter what it is. So even though I didn't go that route, pun unintended, it's still something that my brain spends a lot of spare cycles on.
So beyond me bringing this memory up to your frontal lobe, what was the last time you remembered that was like the first thing you wanted to be? Like, when's the last time that popped in your head? Do you actually think about that often, or every few years, or is that something that I just like pulled from the depths of your memory?
It's one of those where, like, when you hear the first few beats of a song, you remember every single lyric.
Yes.
It's never been too buried, but I think it's been years since I told that story.
So if that's the first initial memory of you knowing I want to be this, like you, and then of course you have that photographic memory of you like writing it down on a paper and the teacher correcting you, which kind of helps log that as a memory. What's the first thing you wanted to be where you were actually actively doing something, taking a class in school, and you're like, yeah, I love this, or planning for secondary education, university, whatever it may be? When was that first concept, and what was it?
It was, I'll answer this in two ways. I mean, part one is mom dragging me to church on Saturdays to mentor other high schoolers in church. And so growing up, I wanted to be a math teacher. I thought that was the coolest thing. And when I got to college, I still wanted to be a math teacher. I got to, I think, third semester math and ran away kicking and screaming and realized this is not the world I want to be in for the rest of my life. But starting to tutor folks early on, I think is my first memory of what I thought was going to be my first calling. Teaching is still a big part of what I do, but having chalk on my elbows at the end of every day isn't the path that I took.
So you were actually actively tutoring people. Were you tutoring in math?
I think that's probably what I focused on the most, but I helped out wherever I could. My mom was an English major, and so she was very more of a liberal arts brain. My dad was much more of an engineering brain, and so it's been a very long time. But the way I remember it in my head is we just kind of did the best we could with whatever was thrown at us.
Yeah. And then you said you, not by the tutoring part didn't say I don't want to be a math teacher. It was just math lessons we were, or math courses. We were like, this is it, was it because like you saw the teacher that was teaching the math and you're like, they don't look like they're enjoying their life. What like part of that threw you off?
Oh no, I mean I was 19. I wasn't that thoughtful. It was more about what I wasn't enjoying. It became less fun parlor tricks and showing people how to square numbers in my head and turned into this like really deep, really heavy. I want to say it was linear algebra was when I finally dropped out, or somewhere around calculus. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Uh,
that sounds it checks out. That sounds
yeah,
about right.
yeah. I just wasn't enjoying it anymore, and I realized over time that I enjoy doing things that I'm good at. Let me put it a different way. I struggle doing things that I'm not skilled at. And so when I started to run into a little bit of friction, I fell back on what I knew best, and that was computer science and programming.
So but that was going to lead into my next question, but I want to mention one thing here on the math part real quick before we transition.
Yeah.
Is it's you and the math story reminded me of kind of me growing up where I was the person that was getting top of the scores in the class in math and I hated it. And it
Hmm.
never like looking back like it it kind of made sense like looking back at it now, but as a I don't know, 4th grade, 5th grade student, oh, I'm finishing all my tests before everybody, I'm acing everything, and then it's like I hate math even though I was good at it, but I feel like it was because like you said, like with your higher advanced classes, your calculus and the linear algebra and stuff, it's so off putting because I don't know if this is the same reason why it was off putting for you, but it's just so not interesting. So it's really hard to be good at something, or even your side of wanting to teach math because you're good at math, and then it's just like this is just not interesting. And I feel like that's a problem just with our education system in a nutshell is it's not interesting. But there's a lot I feel like nowadays hopefully things are getting a little bit better where teachers, the good ones anyway, are making things more interesting. But do you think that's kind of the summary of why you faded away from that because of you were good at math, but being surrounded by math and teaching other people a lot? I know you kind of made the joke about the chalk on the elbows, but was it actually like
Yeah.
I this is so not interesting even though I'm great at it, let me shift to something else?
The irony is the issue for me was how applicable it was to my current life. And so thinking about linear algebra, thinking about derivatives, for example, I could never see a reason why I would use it.
Exactly.
In high school, I hated history class. And I'm thinking, all this is for is to make small talk at a dinner party when I'm older. Fast forward a couple decades, and I use derivatives all the time. Because when you think about excitement, which is what I'm all about, finding exciting games in real time, if you look at a win probability graph, and we've all seen one before, it might
Yep.
start in the middle for a game, might go up or down based on who's doing well. The derivative of that graph will spot the most impactful moments of the game. And so for me, I wasn't able to connect the dots as a late teenager of how in the hell I'm ever going to use any of this hardcore math stuff later on in life. And 9 times out of 10, that was absolutely the right decision. Just the funny irony that, God laughing at your plans is fast forward 20 years and it's what I do all day.
It is always funny how things work themselves out there. So 18, 19, you're graduating high school, you're changing your plans of math teaching is not for me. You mentioned a minute or so ago that computer science is kind of what took over the interest part of stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess did you go to college right after high school, and was that the focus on the computer science side of things?
Yeah, so actually, when I stopped focusing on math, it was actually my freshman year of college. And so I got to college thinking I'd be a math major, then switched gears very quickly, which wasn't too hard to do so early on in college, and focused purely on computers and programming. Ended up dropping out my senior year, but yeah, computer science was the all and the everything after the first few months of school.
So, okay, you put in 3 years of school. Granted, two of those was
Three and
computer
a half.
science, three and a half, two and a
Yep.
half roughly computer science because you said
Yep.
freshman year was the math plans. And
Right.
then what caused you to be like, I can achieve my goal? Was it the mindset of I can achieve my goals without doing any more of this, even though you were kind of on the landing strip of your degree? Or was it that you when you because you switched, you had so much more to do?
No, it was a little bit of all of it, but I'll tell you a story about my last final that I ever took. It was in a big gymnasium with those stereotypical sort of wooden, fold out tables, two people to a table. And I was taking a final for, I think it was biology. And it was December 99, so my senior year. And taking the test is pretty quiet, and then I hear a loud thud. And I look over and I don't understand what that was. And then I notice maybe 20 feet away from me, I see legs on the ground shaking. A student was having a seizure. They didn't stop the test. They came in with paramedics and like stretchered her out. And it was just like, keep going, keep going. And that was my last academic uh, higher learning experience. It was late 99 when the dot-com boom was doing its thing. I think I had a dozen job offers at that point. I remember getting sent a fruit basket and thinking, life doesn't get any better than this. I just got a free fruit basket in the mail. But it was as scary as it was. Around then, it was the easiest time ever to drop out of school. If you had a CS degree and a pulse, you were getting a ton of job offers in 99, 2000. And so for me, I was tired of learning things and working on things that, again, didn't feel applicable. I wanted to build, I wanted to create, I wanted to innovate, and getting out into the workforce as quickly as possible. Ended up joining a sports startup back in the day. I just couldn't wait to do it.
So essentially, your education or your need to show up to school and do things in class was throttling you because so much was happening, like you said, with the dot com boom and everything. You're like, I'm costing years of my life not jumping out and getting started than I am on school. Because originally, before you mentioned that last part, I was actually going to ask you if that seizure scenario was so like PTSD to you that you're like, I like that it shook you to the point where it pushed you away from school, or is it just like just one nail into the coffin or the final nail into the coffin that you were already 1 foot out the door by that point?
It shook me, but unfortunately for MIT, it wasn't surprising. I mean, they always say there are three things at MIT. It's work, sleep, and friends. And you have to choose two. So it was never the right fit for me. I'm so thankful I went there. I learned a ton in school. I learned a ton outside of school, just being surrounded by everyone that's used to being the class president. And how do you work on a team when everyone's used to being the leader? There's a lot that I learned outside of the classrooms being there for 3.5 years. Um, but for me, it was a nail in the coffin, but it wasn't the core reason. It was, straw that broke the camel's back.
Fair enough. You did mention that when you did decide to step away from academics altogether, that you did get a startup or join a sports startup. So kind of go into more what was that? What was your role with them?
Sure I was going to be a millionaire for that one. It was a company
It's
down in
always it's
D.
always the first one. I mean,
Always.
not saying that's impossible for your first one not to make you a millionaire, but it's always the first one. You're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm gonna be rich.
How can it not work?
Yeah.
Um, it was, I thought it was still a brilliant idea, but the idea was you could get a little card that you would take with you when you go to the gym. You'd go up to a machine, you'd swipe, you'd do your set, you go to the next machine, you'd swipe. The idea being, if I'm suddenly on the road in Denver, I can walk up to any machine, swipe it, and say, "Hey, Mark, welcome back. You should do 12 sets at 120 because of what we've seen in your past history." It's called Gym America, and I built mobile apps for them. So in 2000, it was uh, WAP, Web Application Protocol, I think was the acronym. This was pre-HTML on your phone. This was like early, early, early days, but had this really basic way to interact with our tech over your phone. And it was a blast. I loved it. I remember I worked a 22-hour day, pulled an all-nighter, and thought that was the coolest thing that could be done by an engineer ever. And these days, those are much rarer and much more far in between. But back then, it was how hard can I work? How much can I build? And I loved every second of it.
So how or why did that end? Was it the company folded or that you moved on to greener pastures?
So it was interesting. I lived at a fraternity in college. 50% of males at MIT, at least back then, were in fraternities. So it's a pretty normal thing. And as I dropped out halfway through my senior year, I just stayed in my house for the spring term of my senior year. And it was great because I was working remotely. I would travel down to DC, maybe once a month, but I was still living, still hanging out with all my friends. So fast forward a few months, and one of the companies that had given me an offer earlier just gave me the full court press. And I got really excited about it. And it's a company called Trilogy Software based here in Austin. And they just twisted my arm enough, and I came down. I checked out Austin again, fell in love with it, and thought, Austin would be a fun place to be for 2 years. Fast forward 25 years, I'm still in Austin. But the job was so exciting and so alluring that I couldn't say no. So I packed up everything and moved down to Austin in June of 2000.
All right, so just to make sure I have all the my chronological timeline here. So
Yeah.
you were staying in like a Greek house essentially at MIT, and then that is the place that you left just before roughly the seizure chaos. You're I'm not this is not for me anymore, but you stayed living there while you're working for the gym concept, which actually does sound pretty interesting. I don't know if I've heard of that before, but something that I mean, I'm sure that's a mobile app at this point that does all of that for
Yeah.
you. But yeah, to track everything like that, you can go to any gym that has it implemented. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So now we have a job offer. We're moving our entire life to Texas.
Yeah.
And what is so I know you said the name of the company, but what was your role and what were you doing with that and then what was the full court press that made you say like, oh, like because you said your mind was already with the gym company of
Mhm.
this is going to make me a millionaire. So how did this company come in and say, hey, no, this is what's going to make you a millionaire, but you have to move your entire life to Austin?
Trilogy is a really fascinating company. They've written books on recruiting specifically done by Trilogy. Trilogy and Microsoft were going toe to toe, even though most people that listen to this have probably never heard of the company. It's a really, really fascinating story and lots of fascinating stories. I got down here for the first time, I want to say November, so before I dropped out my senior year. And I'm coming from Boston. So I get down to Austin. It's in the mid 70s. They drop me on 6th Street. I'm drunk within 90 minutes. And I think this is the coolest place ever. Very much a work hard, play hard company. Um, but they were mostly B2B enterprise software focused, which unsurprisingly, today I'm doing a lot of B2B enterprise software focused work. And so it was a lot of trial by fire. When I first got here, I was hired as a generic programmer. There were 150 of us in our sort of boot camp. One of the brilliant things they did with recruiting was they would bring people in classes. So I was part of Trilogy University 2000. We just called it T2K. So it's almost like summer camp. You have 150 20 somethings coming to Austin. Most of us aren't from Austin. All of us making more money than we thought we'd ever make in our lives, and are all just sort of figuring it out as we go. And so I was buying my first car, I was getting my first apartment, and all my friends are buying their first car and getting their first apartment. And so there were some instant bonds. And my closest friend to this day here in Austin is someone I met 25 years ago, the second day that I had arrived in Austin. And so we all jumped in, we bonded really quickly and built really amazing stuff. And so eventually my role sort of morphed into what we called pre-sales. So our sales team, our business developers would go out to these, whether it's a Ford or a Nissan, a Toyota. I was mainly in automotive. They would sell things. Some existed, some didn't. They would come back and say, hey, Mark, we need a demo of this. I would sprint, get it done. And then while the paperwork was getting done, we'd actually really build out the full thing. So I was sort of the tech magician behind our frontline sales folks.
And I believe you said that that life transition was right about what, year 2000?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how long did that the euphoria of making more money than you've ever thought you were going to make, you have the car, the apartment, everything, working for this great company, doing great things, how long did that last for in Austin?
Sure. So I think we topped out at 1,500 people at Trilogy. We arrived summer 2000, and I think it was a year and a half later, or a year later, we had layoffs, and a third of the company got laid off. I remember I lived in a house. It was three of us, two coworkers, and then behind us, catty corner, was another three-person. So six of us, all like with shared a fence essentially in our backyard. And out of the six, four got laid off. So all of the fun was pulled right out. I ended up staying there until late 2004. So it's about 4.5 years at Trilogy, but still doing the same role pretty much the whole time, just less we're going to take the whole company to Vegas this weekend type vibes. So it changed a lot. It was a lot more regular, but I was there for another 4.5 years.
And did the eventual end of that job come from you eventually being part of a future cut layoff, or was it something where there was a greener pasture opportunity that came around?
It was more the former. So we started going through layoffs, and eventually they got good at layoffs where they would ask for volunteers. They would say, hey, we know how many we need to lay off. Raise your hand if you're interested in severance. And then if they didn't hit that mark, they would just, force other people to leave. And so late 24,
Did a lot of people
my
volunteer with that like opportunity?
yeah, I'll get to that in a
All
second.
right.
So, you get to 2024. I was an only child raised by a single parent. My mom got sick and passed away summer of 24. And so I get back to work. I'm finally putting myself together, and there's another round of layoffs. And I just didn't want to be doing anything. So the idea of getting 3 months severance and getting to just shut it down and repair was perfect. So I raised my hand really, really quickly for, I don't know, maybe the seventh round of layoffs. Ended up selling everything I owned, selling my only car, moving to Hawaii, and recharging the batteries for a good 4 or 5 months in Waikiki.
Yeah, you mentioned that volunteering came with that 3 month severance. Was that kind of
Yeah.
was that a bonus to volunteering, or was it so? For example, was it 3 months if you volunteered, 2 months if they had to pick you themselves?
I don't remember.
Okay,
I I think it was standard either way. I
okay.
think they were being kind about it, but yeah, for me it was 3 months.
So then, what was the mindset that took you from 3 month severance, currently, I mean, essentially jobless? I don't think it doesn't sound like you had something lined up immediately following that, and then going to Hawaii, which personally never been, but I know that it's not the easiest, most financially feasible place to live in, even for a month. And you said they were there for a handful of months. So, what was the what was the brain doing during that point where it's like, you know what, this is what we're. I'm assuming you made so much money that you're like, I've earned this, and you took it like, as an extended vacation. Is that kind of where the brain was going a little bit?
No, it was more of I was a broken human being. I just need to get the hell out of Dodge.
Okay.
I was very fortunate. A good fraternity brother of mine was from Hawaii. He grew up in Hawaii and moved back to Hawaii after school. And his parents had an apartment that they were renovating to eventually rent out. And so, in exchange for just living there and helping him fix up a few things, I got to stay in this time, essentially a hotel room, for 4 months for free. At the end of it, I think I was down literally 99% in my savings just because I milked it all dry. But it was exactly what I needed at the time. I ate poke, I rode around on a pink scooter. It was exactly what my heart, what my soul needed to get over a really tough year. Um, but yeah, it wasn't what I would have expected, but it only happened because I was lucky enough to have someone who is and was important to me back then who gave me a soft landing.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome friendship opportunity there to
Yeah.
get that. Especially, I mean, given the circumstance of you just essentially ended your job and then kind of doing that mental reset. And now, was it a 4 month agreement when you went to Hawaii, or was it just like, hey, this is I've had my brain is reset, my soul is reset, I'm ready to get back into things?
Yeah, I love Hawaii. It's a beautiful place. Long in my transit nerddom, Boston to Honolulu, I think is the longest domestic flight you can take. Hawaii is beautiful, but it's almost too perfect at times. Like the high temperature in the average temperature in the summer is 85 degrees. The average temperature in the winter is 80 degrees. So as wonderful as it is, I kind of missed wearing jeans. I kind of missed wearing fleeces, and the perfection of it almost grained on me. And so I got an idea about working for an advertising agency. They're called Wyden and Kennedy. They're based up in Portland. They're OG rock stars. Like they came up with Just Do It. Like they are rock star ad agency, and they were starting this sort of boot camp internship program. And I hung all my hopes on that. I put together this like cool flash animation, and there was like this Jay-Z soundtrack to it. And I was sure I was going to get in. It didn't work out. I did move to Portland. But the idea was really, I need to be here to repair. Once I found out that I didn't get the Wyden Kennedy gig, I realized, okay, I'm ready to go back to work again. And it was only a few weeks after that that I packed everything up and went back to Austin.
And the main thought, just to make sure I understood that, was because Austin had was mainly the weather base, because you didn't. Well, you had friends in Austin, both the ones
Yeah.
you worked with and the ones you made, and then you also loved the fact that you can wear jeans, which, me being in Florida my entire life, I understand the Hawaii. I mean, I don't know. Hawaii just is probably better weather in general than Florida, but yeah, 80 degrees during the nighttime, 90,000 degrees during the day. That definitely makes sense. And when you came back, um, did you come back with? I'm assuming there wasn't job interviews that were happening through like Skype at this time. So you came back and you're like, okay, now that I'm back, now I'm gonna get back into the workforce. Let me figure out where I want to be. How long from you getting back to Austin did the next opportunity line up?
Ooh, so I probably got back in February, I think January, February, back to Austin. And it was a good 4 or 5 months before I found a good gig. I think that feels right. And I ended up doing an ad agency here in Austin. The idea of working for Wyden and Kennedy really woke up some creative juices in me, where the idea of building tech is great. I love it and I always will. But building sort of cooler things for brands really excited me. And so I found a job after 4 or 5 months for with an ad agency called T3. They've been acquired and changed names, so unfortunately they're not around anymore. But this time was, I instituted a wiki for the company. We had never had that before. We were building Facebook apps for JCPenney. When all the stuff with Cambridge Analytica happened, where folks were pulling out data that they shouldn't be, I was like, yeah, of course, we've been doing that for years. Like we were doing really fun projects that had never been built before uh, in anywhere really, but getting to do hard tech within an agency was just a ton of fun.
Now, what is the? So I'm trying to remember the timeline of what you were saying at the very beginning of when you started. Are you watching this?
Yeah.
From you working for the ad agency to the brain baby just popping in your head of are you watching this? How much time do we have in between those two?
Sure. So got back to Austin in early 25, started at T3 in mid 25. I went to, sorry, oh 05.
Oh, it's like wait,
Sorry,
I'm
oh
all over the
04, oh
place now.
05,
Okay.
oh 04 and oh 05. And then spring 2006, I was at South by Southwest. And I remember Twitter was on all the screen. That's when Twitter really launched. And I remember just loving being at South by and how fun and magnetic and electric everything was. And it felt like your brain synapses were just firing faster. And I came up with that idea and another idea that week, or at least the ideas crystallized. And that was March '06. In August '06, I quit my job at T3. I left all my healthcare behind and burned all the boats and went all in on Are You Watching This?
And how did that originate as like do you remember where you were, what you were doing, what you were watching, like when that first became a brain baby? What tell us kind of go into that story if you can remember that moment.
I remember it well. The seed of the idea is if we rewind to summer 2000 when I first moved to Austin. So I remember I was sitting in my little, cookie cutter apartment in this apartment complex, and the Jets were playing on Monday Night Football. And it was Jets Dolphins, I think. And I thought, this will be great. I'll get a pizza, I'll get some beer, I'll sit down, I'll watch this game. By halftime, it was a complete blowout. I'm like, oh, this sucks. So by the end of the third quarter, I was in bed. I gave up on it. Wake up in the morning, and it was the Monday night miracle. Not only did the Jets storm back, but Jumbo Elliott, an offensive lineman, scores a touchdown to tie it, to win it. I don't even remember at this point. But the game has a Wikipedia page, is how epic it turned into. And I completely gave up on it. And so I think that was the first real seed of, man, I should have stayed up for that. Fast forward a few years later, I remember being in Times Square, not wanting to get out of my hotel room when there was an epic Agassi Blake match at the US Open. And those are the two I remember the most of, man, if I just knew that that was going to be good or knew that it was heating up, I wish someone would have given me that digital tap on the shoulder and said, hey, go turn on the TV, go watch the match. There's something amazing happening.
So let's just assume that nobody listening or watching has heard of this, which of course I've talked to you plenty about this. Are you watching this you created? So we understand the creation of you had experiences. You're like there needs to be a better opportunity for people that are in my shoes that need to know that something really cool is about to happen or something cool is happening. So kind
Yeah.
of if you want to do an overview or be as specific as possible, I mean either one works. Kind of tell people what this Are You Watching This started as and then what it became.
Yeah, it's all about curation. So what we do is we monitor pitch by pitch, shot by shot data for games around the globe. Everything from the NBA and the NFL to third tier Brazilian soccer. And what we're able to do in real time is figure out when sporting events get exciting. You can kind of think of it like a red zone channel, but for every sport across the globe. The easiest way to think about it is if we go back to that win probability graph I mentioned, might start in the middle, might go up or down based on who's winning. Generally, the more violently that graph is going up and down, generally the more exciting the game is. So if we rewind to last week, a great example of our tech in action was Reds versus Braves. I think it was a Thursday night. There have been more than 2 million innings of MLB played in history. What happened last Thursday? It was only the third time it ever happened. So it was a 3-3 game going to the eighth inning, utterly forgettable game. And then you get into the eighth inning, and I think it was the Braves were visiting. So Braves, top of the eighth, score 8 runs. You look at the win probability graph, there's 99.99% chance that the Braves are going to win. You go into the bottom of the eighth, and the Reds storm back. They score 5. When it gets to 5, that's where it hit our epic threshold as far as one could tune in. 2 pitches later, they hit a home run. They score 8. This game goes into extra innings, and it's one of the best games of the year. But I didn't know about it until I got the alert. The average sports fan is not thinking, man, I can't wait to watch Braves Reds tonight. But finding those great games in real time is what we're all about. It's what we have a patent on. So we take this real time data about what's exciting, also what we predict is going to be exciting, and we license that to big enterprise customers like Fox Sports, FanDuel Sports Network, and they use it to engage their customers to pull them into the broadcast when it heats up.
So what was the point of so you had the vision, you had the frustrations with the tennis match and the Jets game, and then you created this. At what point during this journey did this I guess seep into the fantasy sports slash sports betting realm? Because I mean, at its core, essentially, it's just an avid fan, or not even an avid fan. It could be casual fans as well, watching moments when something is happening in a game that they may have interest in. But at what point, or how long into that journey did the industry start to, or the sports betting industry start to kind of take interest to you?
It was a long time. I mean, hell, it was 4 years before we even made a dime. It was a lean 4 years. I do a lot of consulting and gig work on the side to keep the lights on. But we started with curation, which games are good at any moment. We expanded into discovery. So, which channel number should I tune into? What streaming service do I need to link to? But it wasn't until 2018 when PASPA fell that we really started our monetization pillar, which is everything Metabet. So that's when we first started talking to books, pulling in APIs, and layering in the complement to the curation discovery. How are we going to monetize this moment? Yes, folks are interested in getting them to the broadcast. But when we started talking to folks about, you can actually make money off of this real time excitement. You can make money off of the last DVR resistant genre on TV that has a crazy shelf life. If you don't watch the game live, it's just not the same. So getting people to the game, but also making money off of getting people to the game. That's when things really took off on the Metabet side of things.
When you were having those initial discussions with these companies in the sports betting space, sports books and other media companies, which entity led the conversation or that got the meeting booked? Was it Metabet? And then you're like, I also have this other thing that you're interested in, or is it vice versa?
It's a great question. I mean, it really depends on the year. Back in 2019, really 2020 is when things started to take off for us. There was a lot of performance marketers, a lot of affiliate folks, and they could see how curation discovery made sense, but the monetization was a slam dunk for them. When you look at some of our broadcast folks, they're much more on the curation discovery side of things because that makes sense to them. The monetization, the gambling still feels they're a little wary of it still. But for us, our focus is to talk to our monetization customers, introduce them to curation discovery. Talk to our curation discovery customers, introduce them to the monetization. Because when you do all three together, that's where the real magic happens. I mean, I think MLB leaves $1 million on the table every time there's a no-hitter through 8. You have so many people who've cut the cord who would happily pay 99 cents to watch the last 3 outs of a no-hitter. You have so many people who cut the cord would happily place a bet on if the no-hitter is going to happen if you give them a live stream. So there's all sorts of interesting monetization. If you can do all three together, that's, to me, is where the most impact can be in.
So 2005, we moved back to Austin. We work a few months, or no, not even a few months, a few years at the ad agency. And then the situation happens where essentially 15 years into Are You Watching This? Then we have or 15-ish years, I think, based on my math. Then the sports betting glory days of 2018.
Yeah.
Then it kind of shifted to, now I can finally, there's a um, non insane way to monetize this now. So let's go ahead and go that route. So right now, I believe storyline wise, we're what 2018. Then you said a few years of this. So I know that we're probably got about 5 years left. Is that essentially the cherry on top, and now you're just kind of crushing it on both ends, or is there anything else in the story that kind of shifts to where you were in 2018 with the repeal to where you are now in 2025?
Well, Metabet was just a side quest for us in the beginning. It was a friend of mine from a sports data company reached out with the idea and said, "Hey, I've been toying with this idea. Do you think we could do something here?" I was like, "Yeah, let me see if I can build something on the tech stack we already have." And we tried a few things, and nothing really worked. It was a good 18 months before things really picked up. But I never thought it would turn into something as large as it has. It's all one tech stack, though. It's multiple brands and multiple logos and websites and all that stuff. It's really one tech company. It's just different limbs on the tree we might call Metabet versus Are You Watching This? But there's so much more to come, and a lot of the future to me lies in the patent that we have for excitement analytics. So excitement analytics defined with the patent office is going from an objective box score and translating that into an excitement rating. And we have a patent on that until 2033. So, about 8 more years where by the letter of the patent, we're the only ones that can really do anything in that space. Folks have stepped on our toes, and we've been able to bat everyone back so far. There is one fruit company out there who is infringing on the patent, who we don't dare knock on their door because I'm sure they'll squash us like a bug. Um, but it's honestly the most valuable thing that we have because there's so much value that can be extracted from automated alerts when you package it the right way. One of the biggest things we're working on this year is a recommendation engine that is excitement analytics based because you can draw a fine line or a direct line between someone's fandom and the threshold of excitement before you engage with them. If you install any sports app, the first thing it always says is, okay, check a box next to each of your favorite teams. And that assumes that sports fandom is binary. I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I'm a tortured Knicks fan. I like watching the Warriors, but my fandom for each is different. But what we're hoping to do with this, because we have this patent, we think we're the only ones that can build this type of recommendation engine, really dial into the fingerprint of each person's fandom. A game only has to be lukewarm for the Yankees before I'll tune in. If it's a Rockies game, it needs to be the most epic of epic before I'm even going to care. And so, really understanding the subtleties and the uniqueness of all of our fandoms is one of the reasons why, yes, we've done a lot, but there's a lot more still to build on top of everything we've done already.
I like it. So, to wrap up this podcast, now that we've brought everything to the forefront of your brain from kindergarten to 2025, looking back on the entirety of what you can recall at this given second, what is the butterfly effect, the number one thing out of your entire life cycle that led you to where you are now? If you can attribute it to one event.
It's my mom being so brilliant as to buy me a computer when I was 9, 10 years old. If that didn't happen, nothing else would have. Um, there's a great quote that I'll steal from Dr. Cornel West that says, I am who I am because someone loved me. If my mom wasn't the superhero that she was to emigrate from Jamaica, become a citizen, get her degree, work in a major law firm in New York City, the stats say I should be where I am. And so, butterfly effect, yes, it's probably her buying a computer. Um, but there were so many butterflies, so many waves, so many ripples created by my mother that it's hard to really hammer down to just one.
I mean, you did a pretty good job just then, and I I wasn't sure how long it would take you to come to that because there's been so many twists and turns in the entire story that we kind of went through here. But I feel like that's kind of something. It's how quickly it came off and how smoothly you delivered it. It sounds like that's something that you think about and attribute success to often. So I don't know. It's props to mom. Uh,
Yeah, it's an easy one.
yeah.
Props to mom. Yeah.
But Mark, appreciate your time. Thanks for kind of going through your story with us here, telling us how you got here. Um, is there any other last quotes, 2 cents, anything else you want to throw out before we wrap this up?
No, I appreciate it. No, this was a ton of fun. It's um, entrepreneurship is a crazy thing to do. And people ask me, when you're done with Are You Watching Some Metabet, what are you going to do next? And I always say nothing. It is exhausting and it's glorified. But I think the number one thing that I recommend to folks is sharing your stories. And that's why I appreciate you doing this new podcast so much, is to share the excitement, but also share the warts, share the tough times. And I think that's becoming much more appreciated in the general sort of discourse around startups and entrepreneurship and just life, explaining and not being hesitant to share the things when things aren't going as planned. So thank you for creating this platform for folks to come on and teach and share, and also for folks to learn as well.
All right. Well, again, we appreciate your time, Mark. If there's anybody that wants to check in with Mark on LinkedIn, as you see right underneath his face on the screen, it's simple. Mark Phillip. Just add him on LinkedIn, send him to connect. Unless he doesn't want to connect with you, then he won't. That's up to him. He makes his own rules. You can't force connections on LinkedIn. But Mark, thanks again for your time, and we have going to wrap it up now.
Always fun, my friend.